Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Lake County. I am Susie Lockwood, and I have the honor of being your service leader this morning. We will begin with announcements, and I will start with our few that we normally have. Please remain muted unless called upon to speak. And a friendly reminder, this also includes during our hymns. The tech team has learned it sometimes interferes with the sound quality. We do want you to sing along, but please be muted. Thank you. A reminder that the service is being recorded, although we do not record the time of sharing of joys and concerns or the period of discussion following the service. And if you've missed any of the services, I suggest, or if you want to share with some friends, I would suggest that you go to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and type in the search UUCLC office, and there we are. You can also find the link in our weekly bulletin and the communicator. Speaking of the weekly bulletin and communicator, please make sure that you check out all the many group activities that are going on at UUCLC via Zoom, except for Tai Chi, which is held live and in person in the church parking lot. Also, I suggest you become familiar with our chat box. You can use it to share joy and concern if the words are too tender to speak, and it will then be shared with the congregation. You can also use the chat box to make a donation to UUCLC. You can also use it to, well, the links for that will be in the chat box, and you can make that donation today, right now. We will bring you more about information on ways to donate later in the service. Does anyone else have an announcement? I believe Janine has an announcement this morning. Janine?
Yeah, good morning. Bernie and I are trying to collect bicycles for Forward Path. Forward Path is excuse me, an agency that provides support and housing for young adults who have aged out of the foster care program in Lake County. And one of their needs is to have bicycles so kids can get to jobs and get to Lake Tech for education, things of that sort. So if anybody has a used bike that's in good shape, just give us a call and we'll figure out a way to pick it up. Our number is 352-669-2272. I'll put that in the chat. Okay.
Janine,
Yep.
Is there any connection to if there's minor repairs, or is this, there we are, I couldn't, all right, now I see myself. Is there any connection if there are minor repairs? I've had a bicycle forever and I just haven't had it repaired, and I know some organizations do. You don't, we would have it repaired first.
Yeah, if it was a minor thing, if it wasn't structural, if it's like a tire or something like that.
Okay,
yeah, definitely.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful, thank you.
Okie doke, thank you.
Any more announcements? Please raise your hand and our team will call on you.
Christy Cleveland.
Christy.
I just want to clarify that Tai Chi is not meeting now.
Oh.
It will not meet until December again.
Okay, I thought about that, but thank you for doing it. It would probably be too hot for number one, and number two, you're not here. You're in Michigan.
That's right. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more announcements? Just raise your hand.
Jane Hepting has an announcement.
Jane?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Most of you are familiar with the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. They've worked really hard to help ex-felons restore their voting rights, and they offer the payment of fines so that they can register to vote. Well, they are coming to Lake County this coming Saturday. They're bringing a bus. Here's their little flyer. And they're going to be at Carver Park, which is on Bates Avenue in Eustis, Saturday at 2 p.m. There will be attorneys there to help ex-felons file a petition to expunge their criminal rights. And of course, the applications will be there for them to apply for help to pay their fines. So if you know any organizations that need to have this information, you can, maybe call me or email me afterwards, and so that I can help get this flyer out to them. Thank you.
Bless you, Jane. You're always working for the betterment of people. Yes, anyone else?
Christy has something else?
Yeah, I want to piggyback with what Jane said, and that it's actually going to be like a family event. They're also providing vaccinations, and they have a balloon artist there, and food, and they need volunteers and financial donations. So in the Sunday bulletin, there are a couple phone numbers and addresses where if you want to send a donation to help them, or go and volunteer. They need people to volunteer to help. So
thank you for that, Christy. I was wondering if they were just going to have a bus with lawyers. That's wonderful. It'll draw more people.
Diana Reed has an announcement.
Yeah, just to add to what Jane and Christy have said, this whole event, and it is like a festival. It is sponsored by our own Lake County organization, All About the Ballots, which has been started by May Hazelton and Cassandra Brown, and is also affiliated with the Voices of Reason, who were successful in preventing the Confederate statue from coming here. So this is a big event. So and I know that May and Cassandra have been working like crazy trying to put this all together. There's a lot of aspects to it. So I encourage everyone to read their bulletin and to show up there, because it's going to be like a festival.
Thank you, Diana, for that. Thank you. Any more announcements this morning? This is wonderful.
I don't see any more.
Thank you, Janine. Again, welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Lake County. We are a faith built on the foundation of freedom, reason, and tolerance. A faith sustained by acts of kindness and justice. A faith that visions a world flourishing with equality for all people and all beings. A faith that demands the living out of goodness. A faith that requires thoughtfulness. A faith of wholeness. A faith of love. And all are welcome here. It is time to welcome our first-time visitors, or anyone who has been absent for a while, to say hello. But first, I would like to, it is with my deepest pleasure to welcome back our guest speaker this morning, Reverend Libby Moore. Hi. Reverend, hi, Libby. Reverend Libby grew up a UU in the White Plains, New York, and is now a member of the First Unitarian Church in Rochester, New York, where she has been active with UU Wellspring, a spiritual deepening program developed there. She was ordained as an interfaith minister in 2011 and currently offers spiritual companionship to people seeking a deeper spiritual life. And we welcome Libby this morning.
Thank you so much, Susie. I'm going to offer opening words.
One more minute. I'm sorry. And then we'll go to you. Now I want to ask if we have any visitors this morning. I'm sorry. Any first-time visitors? I would like you to raise your hand, and someone will call on you to unmute and introduce yourselves. Do we have any first-time visitors this morning, or someone who's been away from us?
Oh, I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay. If you are too shy, you can always use the chat box to say hello. And if any visitors or anyone would like to receive our weekly service bulletin, our monthly newsletter, The Communicator, or if you would like someone to contact you to learn more about us and Unitarian Universalist, please let us know in the chat box or visit our website at office-lake-county-uu.net. And now I will turn it over to opening words from Reverend Libby. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you. Between rocking the boat and sitting down, between stirring things up and peaceably going along, we find ourselves here in community, each called from many different journeys, many different life paths onto this river road. Some are here because the rocking of the boat is too much tumult, too much uncertainty, too much pain. Some are here with questions about where the boat is going, how best to steer it, where this journey ends. Others are here as lovers of the journey, lovers of life itself. Here in front, behind, beside, each a passenger, each a captain, doing the best we can. Rest here in your boat with me, the river calls. Listen to how I flow, the sound of life coursing all around you. Let the current hold you. Let the current guide you. The river that gently flows through your soul whispers, come, let us worship. To begin our worship together this morning, Susie will light the chalice as I read opening the chalice lighting words by Sarah Eileen Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames, we rise.
This flame somewhere. We now make time for sharing our joys and concerns, sorrows, or to set an intention for the coming days. Again, this part of our service is not recorded.
Lord, we must share if we would keep this gift all else above. We cease to give, we cease to have, such is the law of love.
Let us now reaffirm who we are as together we recite our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We are so fortunate to have our UU family to support each other, each and every one of us, in order to continue our virtual services, keep our beautiful building protected and ready for our eventual return. Maybe in September, I don't know. We ask for whatever financial support you can provide. Here are some details on how and where to send your contributions. As you see, there are multiple ways, to all of which are found in the Sunday Bulletin or our UUCLC website. You can also donate in the chat box right now. UUCLC thanks you for your support and your donations today. Thank you.
So I invite you to enter now into a time of meditation, which will be followed by some shared silence. Settle into your chair or wherever you are, and we'll begin a quiet reflection together. Sunday morning together is a sanctuary from the workaday world, a Sabbath from the activities and pleasures and pressures of daily life. Take a deep breath. Be fully present to this quiet moment. Feel the fresh air enter your lungs and leave. Again. As we breathe together, may we open ourselves ever more fully to that eternal mystery which lures us toward love and creativity. May we find the courage to live our faith, to seek our truths, and to strive together for a world where freedom abounds and justice truly does flow like water. May we see the myriad ways we are connected to one another through streams of love. May we know that each of us has unseen gifts and burdens, and that in those hidden depths, we share what it means to be human. May we hold one another in deep and tender places with compassion and love. Good morning, friends. It's good to be back with you again today. But I don't guarantee that it's going to be an easy morning. I'm hoping to challenge all of us this morning to think a little more deeply about what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. The big question is how we apply our 7 principles to make them living, thriving aspects of our faith in action. So when I was in my mid-30s, I went to business school, which was what people did in the 80s, I guess. I hadn't taken any math since I was a junior in high school, and I had to take calculus and statistics and linear algebra and finance, and it was overwhelming. And then I graduated, and I never had to apply any of that weird stuff to real life. And I worked for Citibank in financial planning and analysis. I'm hoping this morning that we can do a better job of applying our UU principles. There's this wonderful little book that I treasure called The 7 Principles in Word and Worship. It dives deep into how the principles inform our lives. It reminds us that deeds speak louder than words. It reminds us that the principles aren't dogma that we recite every Sunday morning together, but guidance for how we live out our faith in the real world, which is the only way the principles matter. Even now, although we have general agreement about what we stand for as a people of faith, it's sometimes hard to know how our principles guide us to be in relationship with each other. The complex questions of living in community in the world don't always have easy answers. There's an old saying, if you were arrested for being a UU, would there be enough evidence to convict you? This morning, I'm going to offer a couple of examples and stories and let you decide whether our 7 principles offer enough guidance to respond in ways that would get us convicted. So the first story this morning comes from a New York Times article. It centers on a well-loved teacher in California. But in this chaotic, unpredictable year of politics and pandemic, something happened. Here's the beginning of the article. April 10th, 2021, San Clemente, California. Word got around when Christine Hostetter was spotted at a public mask burning at the San Clemente Pier, and when she appeared in a video sitting on the stage as her husband spoke at a QAnon convention. People talked when she angrily accosted a family wearing masks near a local surfing spot, her granddaughter in tow. Even in San Clemente, a well-heeled redoubt of Southern California conservatism, Ms. Hostetter stood out for her vehement embrace of both the rebellion against COVID-19 restrictions and the stolen election lies pushed by former President Donald J. Trump. This was, after all, a teacher so beloved that each summer parents jockeyed to get their children into her class. But it was not until Ms. Hostetter's husband posted a video of her marching down Pennsylvania Avenue toward the Capitol on January 6th that her politics collided with an opposite force gaining momentum in San Clemente. A growing number of left-leaning parents and students who, in the wake of the civil rights protests set off by the police killing of George Floyd, decided they would no longer countenance the right-wing tilt of their neighbors and the racism they said was commonplace. That there was no evidence that Ms. Hostetter had displayed any overt racism was beside the point. To them, her pro-Trump views seemed self-evidently laced with white supremacy. So she became their cause. There's lots more to this story, as you can guess, much about the disagreements among people in San Clemente about whether to fire Ms. Hostetter or embrace her. So what's your first response, knowing that she was part of the demonstration at the Capitol on January 6th? Let's see whether our UU principles help us respond to this ambiguity. The first principle, as you probably know, affirms the inherent dignity and worth of every person. Every person. So if we believe in the inherent dignity and worth of every person, that means that Ms. Hostetter has dignity and worth, doesn't it? Regardless of her political views. And how should we interact with anybody who has inherent dignity and worth? Do we try to silence them or listen to their story? What more do we need to know? Our fourth principle encourages us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now, Ms. Hostetter's search has taken her in a direction I wouldn't go. There's some implication in the article that she was influenced by her husband, they were fairly recently married. But can we judge that her search wasn't responsible because the end result wasn't something we agree with? Can we reject someone whose search for truth and meaning relies on a perspective that we think is refuted by facts? The fifth principle affirms the right of conscience and the democratic process in the world and in our congregations. Now, I know Joe Biden won the election fair and square, and that the claims of fraud and stolen elections are completely unfounded. I believe in the democratic process in our congregations and in our nation. Still, the democratic process means that some people win and some lose. We don't work on consensus the way the Quakers do. How do we respond when we are the losers? Along with millions of other people, I was out on the streets in January 2017. We marched in response to losing that election. Ms. Hostetter was in the streets 4 years later. How do winners and losers reconcile in the democratic process? It's hard enough in our congregations where we know and love and respect each other. And we see every day how hard it is at a national level. Although she'd been suspended from her job for being in the march on January 6th, Ms. Hostetter was reinstated as a teacher because there was no evidence that she had done anything more than march. She had a reputation for being an excellent teacher. The New York Times article said that until the pandemic, she had never shown any tendency toward political activism in any direction. A former student said she had only warm memories of her time in Ms. Hostetter's class and cannot recall being mistreated or singled out for being Black. But she said, maybe I didn't notice it because I was so young. Maybe it affected how she viewed me and my peers of color. Knowing what you know, would you want Ms. Hostetter as your child's teacher? I have to tell you, I don't have any easy answers. I believe that a fundamental component of our choice to be Unitarian Universalists is learning to love the questions. We're called to listen to multiple sides of every story. Ms. Hostetter chose not to be interviewed for the Times article, so we don't have her perspective, but I wish we did. I believe that our faith asks us to listen to other people's stories. It's how we understand our common humanity. And here's another even more difficult situation. Just a year ago, this coming Tuesday, George Floyd was murdered. Derek Chauvin, who is the Minneapolis police officer who killed him, was tried and convicted for this murder. I am appalled at Derek Chauvin's actions. I am appalled that he was able to sit with his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes without apparently feeling any remorse or any compassion for the man he killed. Like so many of us, I heaved a huge sigh of relief that Chauvin was convicted and that he'll go to prison for his crime. Still, I wonder whether there's more we need to consider. I want to lift up here the 8th principle, which is currently under consideration in many congregations and will be adopted eventually, I hope, by the whole Unitarian Universalist Association. The 8th principle begins, as all the principles do, we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. And then it goes on, journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. In the 8th principle, we recognize the racism in Chauvin's actions, indeed, in most police killings over the years. We acknowledge that the history of policing in this country has unfairly targeted people of color, and that many of our institutions were built on the premise that white people were superior to people of color. And the 8th principle guides us toward taking an uncomfortable and necessary deep examination of our own biases, unconscious as they may be. It also guides us toward dismantling racism and oppression in institutions such as policing. This seems pretty clear and straightforward to me. But at the risk of sounding as though I'm condemning Chauvin's brutal racist behavior, which I'm not, I want to consider it also in light of our 2nd principle. We affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. It does seem as though justice has been honored through Chauvin's conviction, but what about compassion? Compassion means to feel with, to understand what another may have been experiencing or may be experiencing now. Compassion asks us to be aware of more than just what we see at first glance. It asks us to acknowledge that the brutality of police culture and the chronic stress that police officers live with all the time may be at play here. I've been reading a book called My Grandmother's Hands, which you may have heard of or read. It's quite amazing, by Resmaa Menakem, who's a psychotherapist specializing in trauma. Menakem tells us that trauma lives in our bodies and that it's been passed down through generations. It affects white bodies and Black bodies and police bodies. Menakem reminds us that long before coming to this continent, Europeans inflicted horrendous violence on one another, painful, inhumane punishments for people who were convicted of a crime, never-ending wars, brutal serfdom, struggles for survival, poverty. All of that violence, he says, created historical trauma which caused people to pass it along through generations to those who came after, became standard operating procedure. Police officers, he says, not only live with that generational trauma, but they also work in a field where they regularly witness other people's trauma and tragedy, and they thus experience secondary trauma as well. On top of that, in many places, police culture is built around an us versus them thinking. In my community and in many places, most police officers who work in the city live in the suburbs. Officers often see Black bodies as other, less human, less worthy. Menachem writes, "We can condemn all of this as racist, and it surely is. But in many cases, it's not cognitive. It's reflexive and reptilian. To many police bodies, even Black ones," he says, "African Americans are foreign bodies that need to be corralled, damaged, or destroyed." Now, sadly, Derek Chauvin's conviction for murder was an anomaly. Most killings by police officers are never brought to trial. But focusing on just this one officer and this one horrific death deflects attention from a police culture that allows this kind of event to be repeated over and over again. We need to change the culture. We need to understand what it is that causes police officers to fear Black and brown bodies so deeply that their first response is to shoot. We need to change it. And we need to learn to live with complexity and with holding multiple truths, such as justice and compassion when they appear to be in conflict. It is true that Derek Chauvin behaved in a despicable manner and that justice was served by his conviction. And it is also true that he worked in a culture that encouraged him to exert his power over Black bodies, which he saw as other, less than, not valued. Police culture encouraged him to take charge and be in control, and that's what he did. We affirm the complex values of compassion and justice. I recently listened to a wonderful TED Talk called Empathy Is Not Endorsement. This is so important. We can empathize with someone's story, but not endorse their behavior. When we listen to other people's stories, it doesn't necessarily mean that we approve. It does mean that we develop compassion, and we can have compassion without condoning someone's actions. We can grow an awareness of what might have caused unacceptable behavior without allowing it to continue. We can live with the complexity of not having one single answer to a question. Now, most of us remember and love the seventh principle, respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. This principle calls us to embrace our connection with all beings, not just our family and friends and the members of our congregations, but all existence. We are interdependent, part of something larger than ourselves. Despite our very American tendency toward individualism, the seventh principle calls us to broaden ourselves, to include all existence, and to know that without others, we cannot exist. To me, this principle is the one that comes closest to talking about love, which you may or may not have noticed is never mentioned in any of the principles. Not love that is the easy, facile love on Hallmark cards and emojis. Not the romantic love that makes our bodies sing and our hearts quiver. But the love which calls us to the deep certainty that we are all one. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. writes this: "Love is not to be confused with some sentimental outpouring. Love is much deeper than emotional bosh. It is understanding and creative, redemptive goodwill for all men. Remember, he was writing this back in the 50s and 60s. And overflowing love that seeks nothing in return. In this world where hate often seems to be the dominant influence, Dr. King writes, returning hate for hate multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness in a night already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. He concludes that only love can drive out hate. We as Unitarian Universalists are called to side with love, to use that as our overall guiding principle to create a better world. Radical love means opening our hearts, being willing to see another person as someone with a unique story worth listening to. Radical love means going beyond our individual interest to the interconnection with the whole that gives us life. At the heart of it, whether you believe that we are all children of God or random products of the universe, we are one. We are all made of the same stardust. We all want safety and community and opportunity for our children and ourselves. We all need to feel cared for and respected and appreciated. We cannot exist in isolation, and being in community with others may be challenging, but it is a challenge worth taking. May love and our UU principles guide us in every difficult, exasperating, horrifying, and joyful moment. May we commit ourselves to making ever deeper channels for the streams of love. May it be so, and amen. So I invite you now to sing together hymn number 1028, which is the Fire of Commitment, but be sure you're still muted while you sing. I will mute myself and sing loudly. So we'll sing the Fire of Commitment.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Our future begins now, friends. Go in hope, for the arc of the universe is long, and we can bend it toward justice. Go in courage, for together we have the strength to confront injustice in our daily lives and in the world. Go in love, because a holy and generous love is both the reason and the means by which we transform our lives. Susie, will you extinguish the chalice?
I extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry on in our hearts until we are together again. Now, if everyone go to your gallery view, and this is our song, Weave. I don't know if Libby remembers. We see our neighbor. We used to do this in the church, but hold hands. And we have Weave. Yes, we're ready. We can see all our faces.
Weave us together, weave us together, in unity and love. Weave us together, weave us together, together in love. Weave